Skeletor better watch that this guy doesn't snap back. Here's your look at the brand new Mondo Master Universe Trapjaw 1/6 scale figure, Mondo exclusive. Freshly escaped from infinity, the psychotic interdimensional cyborg finally cracks our Master Universe 1/6 scale figure line. The Wizard of Weapons joins our other formidable evil warriors, including Scareglow, Merman, and Faker, complete with 30 points of articulation and an extensive array of accessories, plus a fully swappable Cronus head, classic head, and Cronus arm. I better not move too slow or I might find myself missing some digits. Before, of course, we get a closer look at the brand new Master Universe Trapjaw 1/6 scale Deluxe Timed Edition, I'd like to thank the folks first over at Mondo that did provide this sample we could have a look at. At the time of shooting this review, the figure unfortunately has sold out for the $235 asking price over on their site. They had also listed a classic version of Trapjaw that had more of the familiar Filmation colors, but that also had sold out at $235. Your likelihood now of getting this guy, you can either go on their waiting list if the chance ever comes where they stock this guy again, or you can also go the route of trying to find this guy in the aftermarket. Either way, though, I'm going to grab the tape measure, and in a second as well, I'll bring in a couple of figures for comparison. Trapjaw, though, stands about 11.5 inches in height, or the figure's about 29.5 centimeters tall. Well, as big as a bad guy may be, he always still tends to have a boss. And when it comes to Trapjaw's boss, here's what the figure looks like with the Revelation Skeletor. We are also going to be getting ourselves a deluxe version of Skeletor that's going to be coming out pretty soon. Definitely looking forward to having a look at that one. And as well, seeing as we did have a look at He-Man. He-Man seems to be the measuring stick when it comes to these new 6-scale Master Universe releases from Mondo. And here's what Trapjaw looks like with the most powerful man in the universe. Figured first, we look at the figure stand. Trapjaw comes included with the same Mondo stand as we've gotten with releases before. It's shaped in a way that you can see that it has the Mondo logo on the bottom of it. The only thing again about this is I wish that they would be of a larger footprint space, going maybe the route of a rectangular display stand, or even just, hey, a circular stand would be ideal, just because Trapjaw does have a wide stance to him, and it only accommodates so much space with the stand that they provide. The stand, of course, you just take your figure and fit it on top of it. And again, it looks good. I'm glad to see, of course, I'm always appreciative of the fact that any company includes a display stand. I just wish, though, that Trapjaw's was just a tad bit bigger. One thing I'm sure you already have noticed is the fact I've got the figure displayed right now with the Kronos head sculpt. As the way he's been transformed into Trapjaw, I figured we'd also do the same here with the figure release. The figure comes included with 3 interchangeable head sculpts, just so again happens to be the case that we're using with the Kronos head sculpt first, but the figure also comes included with 2 alternate portraits, one a more classic look to Trapjaw, and then one slightly tweaked by Mondo's team. With the armor also as well, it's swappable. Now, right now, I've got actually Kronos with just the shoulder pad. The shoulder pad could technically be also removed. So let's pick the figure up and get a closer look first at the head sculpt for Kronos. Never will there be a time I could see myself wanting to display Trapjaw with this look. I always again appreciate the fact that Super 7 include these extra head sculpts, but with Trapjaw having such an interesting thing about his face, being the fact he does have that snapping jaw, I can't really even see myself ever really displaying the figure with Kronos. The Kronos head sculpt, though, to be fair, is quite good. I like the sneer that he has on his mouth, and the paint is handled so well here. The helmet is something, of course, that's going to carry over to Trapjaw. The only thing that's going to be different, of course, is the fact that on the top of Kronos's, he has a point. Trapjaw then gets the familiar loop afterwards that, of course, in the original toy line, you could run a stringer through it, and you could have Trapjaw sliding down a ripcord. The thing also I had already mentioned is the fact that he does have a shoulder pad piece. Technically, the arms are removable, at least this side is. If you did want to, you could, for all intents and purposes, remove the shoulder pad piece altogether, and then you could have Kronos displayed shirtless instead. The thing, though, that ties everything together is the fact that he does have a shoulder that has already more of a cybernetic design to it, so it kind of lends better, I think, to the idea of actually having him with the shoulder pad piece. The shoulder is actually more of a softer plastic. It has some really interesting details that they've also added some gold and silver on the inside there as well. And again, that just fits over top of his body. Let's, for right now at least, we're going to pop this off. We're going to put the shoulder pad back in place. And we're going to put the arm back in place at least for right now. We'll eventually change things off in a second. Again, just to quickly look once again at Kronos' head sculpt. Fine looking head sculpt, just not my thing. If, though, you wanted something a little bit more closer to trap jaw, then he has two variations to that. One being more the classic sort of design with more the rectangular shaped clamping jaw. For that, I'm going to, of course, take the head and remove it right now from the ball peg provided. It's a little hard at first the times you do this, and then, of course, it gets a little bit easier. Putting on more of the classic head. This head sculpt actually was the one that came with the figure when you first get him out of the packaging. And again, you've got more sort of that boxier mouth. It does open and close, and what's rather really neat about it is when you do open up the mouth, you can see what's left behind of his lower half, at least his lower half of his jaw. A gruesome sight to see. All the more reason I think you would want to really have the trap always closed. Now, there's this variation of his head, and then there's also this version. You can definitely see has a much boxier bottom. I really like this head sculpt, I think, a lot more. Face-wise, though, if I just bring this mouth down, I'm going to bring this mouth down. If you were to say look at the two, from basically like, well, everything other than really just the clamping jaw, everything else still looks to be about the same. The ringlet on the top is the same. It looks like also as well the helmets are sharing the same sculpt. And it also could be said as well for the faces. They look to be identical. I just personally prefer the larger looking clamping jaw myself. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and just pop this head off once again and replace it with what I feel to be the best of the three. Making sure, of course, you're getting that completely in place. This head sculpt, again, has a much wider looking jaw. It definitely looks a lot more sinister. Now, for me, when it comes to displaying this guy, I would really like to have the trap further up like this. But boy, is that ever a really nice looking portrait. The paint that's been handled here, you can see like there's a few little notches and indentations to the actual helmet. And boy, the use of this darker kind of burgundy color works really well with the figure's overall look and presence. The head sculpt, of course, is one thing that's going to then you may want to change the other things to match and follow suit. So we're first of all going to take the arm and we're going to just detach it. It's quite easy, in fact. You're just going to remove it from the ball joint. And then we're going to take the very large robotic arm instead. It plugs in exactly the same way. You don't even have to worry really about the shoulder pad. You're going to want to keep that in place anyways. And then that plugs just into the provided hole. And now we're getting a little bit closer looking like Trapjaw. The only thing that's really left then to do, get the figure here to stand, is he does also have a shoulder harness piece that's going to attach essentially to the shoulder pad, and it's going to slide up the side of his arm. So what we're going to do first is, I'll show you guys what that looks like. You want to make sure that when you are putting it on the figure that this little ringlet sits on the back of the figure's torso. You don't even have to really do any dismantling either. You're simply just going to slide this up his arm. And then on the side, you'll see right here, hopefully you guys can see, there's a couple of holes on the side of his shoulder pad. You want to take these pieces, similar to, in fact, the harness for Battle Cat, kind of work the exact same way. And you want to as well make sure that it's plugged onto the back of the figure's body as well. So just going to plug those both in place. And now Trapjaw is finally finished. And the overall look and presence, boy, this guy looks like a serious threat to He-Man. And obviously he has right now the clamping hand, but he has, of course, several other hands that we'll also have a look at as well. Speaking also of hands, something I probably should have touched the base a little bit on first before we actually start swapping out things. The figure comes included with closed fists. We'll help to be on this side. We'll do nothing at all to help on this side because, of course, we already changed out Cronus's arm. So again, you can easily just pop this off and swap it out with this head sculpt instead. The figure as well comes included with a big, very sharp-pointed mace. Mace is obviously in this case going to be better suited on this side of the figure's body. It's nicely been cast here in a green plastic, and all of the individual spikes, ooh, they're pretty prickly, are all painted nicely here in silver. And again, this just fits onto his hand. The only thing about it, though, is the few times that I've actually attached it into his hand, it's chipped off, as you can see, a little bit of the paint. So I'm sure the more times that you're doing it, the more times that's probably going to start to flake off the paint. Still, though, it's a nice, interesting-looking mace. All right, let's talk all about the things that are going to swap out with the existing hand. Like, as it is right now, the figure has the clamping claw. The claw is something that can be swapped out. It has on its own, by the way, articulation, so you can move it up and down this way, and you can also rotate it this way as well. If you wanted to detach it, though, it's just a case of holding onto the forearm. It's holding on maybe from the side here. And we're just going to pop this off the peg. It's going to squeak a lot of times when you're doing this. Just pop that off like that. And then, of course, this can go somewhere else. We'll kind of get more into that more in a moment. Then the figure comes included with all these extra arm attachments. He has a blaster, for example, very reminiscent of the original toy line. Some additional nice scratchings of silver that's been added to the otherwise all dark gunmetal gray. Again, that just pops in place. The figure also has as well a very large claw hand. I guess by now we wouldn't really say it's a hand, it's just a claw. Some additional gold's been also added to the bottom of it. Really nice looking claw hand. The figure also has as well a hook. The interesting thing about the hook is that it can detach, and once it's detached, it actually attaches then to the rest of the arm via a string. The string was wrapped up. I'm demonstrating right now. It was wrapped up when you first took it out of its packaging. I just unraveled it a bit and just plugged it in place. All of these have, as you probably have already noticed, have the little hooks on the side. So those can also attach onto the figure's body, for the ones at least that aren't going to be displayed with this forearm. The figure also as well comes included with a crossbow. It's a very interesting looking crossbow, as it doesn't look like it actually shoots arrows, but it shoots more likely laser cannon or laser blasts. It's really nicely been painted here. It almost kind of looks more like something that would be displayed with Hordak. I really like the use of this crimson red that they've used. It's actually quite close, in fact, to the color that they use for his helmet. And then the funniest of the things that come included with Trapjaw is he comes with an intergalactic fly swatter. I don't think it was actually called an intergalactic fly swatter. I just felt the need to add intergalactic on the end of that. But it is a big, giant fly swatter. I'd hate to see the size of flies in Eternia. Any one of these, by the way, can again just be attached. All of them do have holes on the ends provided, and then that fits onto the peg that's right there. Let's choose one that we're going to stick with here. I kind of like, honestly, the laser blaster, or I'm kind of leaning also towards the hook. Either one of these, again, just plug onto the end of the cannon, or plug onto the end of the forearm, and they are quite squeaky, though, when you are doing it. Now, like with the original toy, all these other ones that you aren't currently using, you can see down the end of them, they all have hooks. Well, if you take the figure, for example, and you spin it around, all across the back of his belt actually has these little looplets. Now, these can actually be lifted up. And then you can take the hooks of all the things left behind, and they just plug in place. So you can basically have all his extra weapons wielded, not in his arms necessarily, but all around his belt. He also has one here right at the very top where his shoulder strap would be. So again, just depending on which one you would like to really then use. Let's say, for example, if you want to use like the crossbow and put that in there, again, that just attaches in place. They aren't the most secure, though. Moving the figure around, especially like this one right here, it's very prone to popping whatever you attach onto it off. But at least there's a place to store those accessories when you're not currently using them. As we move kind of everything out of the way, I did again want to look back and look at Trapjaw here. The head sculpt, as already mentioned, is fantastic. Preferring this one of the three. I mean, again, it does have articulation. Of course, you can't open and close the mouth. We'll talk all more about the articulation in a second. I did certainly want to show you the size of his arm. This arm is huge. What's rather interesting about this, I'm just going to go ahead and remove his fly swatter. I did say it was a harder thing for these actually to stay in place, and yet the fly swatter was giving me a tough time. Anyways, you can, though, move the arm. And the neat thing about it, though, is it actually does have a little piston. It moves back and forth. The only downside to it, though, is when you move it too far back, it kind of gives away, it spoils a little some of it, because you can kind of see then the post sticking out the top. But there's a nice little pulley system that they've also added there as well. Some decent articulation also as well for this arm. I mean, the fact that it does have like all the same retained articulation as Kronos' arm from before, it's just, again, a much meaner looking arm. More akin definitely to Trapjaw. Of course, the rest of the lower half of the figure's body, he does have the large belt. Really like the additional skull and crossbones. They painted in there nicely with the additional gold. He has himself skirting. Now, the skirting on the side and on the front here is a softer plastic. Again, handling that same sort of dark burgundy color as his helmet, but also adding some additional gold in there as well. If you were to lift the hood, what you'll actually see underneath is a furry loincloth. This is made of basically just a soft kind of faux fur material. And that, of course, covers over top of his regular loincloth that's just underneath that. Decently detailed as well. You've got all the nice green there, open sections on his thighs. Painted it again with some additional brushing of gold. And again, like all the classic things for Trapjaw, he has the very large, clunky looking feet that still manages to retain all the same articulation as the other Master Universe figures we've looked at before. Speaking of articulation, going all the way back to the head sculpt here for Trapjaw, we're going to start our things there. For the posability on Trapjaw, the head is going to be on ball joint, so it rotates the head all the way around. You can have the head looking up this far, or you can have the head looking down that far. It really isn't going to be as much of a range, just because, again, the size and the limitations for his helmet sculpt, but you can also rock the head back and forth. We've already established the fact the figure does have a mouth articulation point, so you can move the jaw up and down that way. As for his arms, now this arm, it's going to rotate all the way around, and it's going to hinge out, but it's only going to hinge out about that far. This arm, on the other hand, does do the exact same. It rotates all the way around, but you can actually bring this one out a lot more, almost at 90 degrees. This one has a swivel in the bicep. This one also has a bend in the elbow, just a single hinge, and you can rotate the hand all the way around. While this side of his body actually has a swivel right here where his bicep normally would have been. There's the piston hinge there for the elbow, and then whatever attachment you then display him with can also rotate. Technically, by the way, it's just attached by peg. The upper torso on Trapjaw is a little harder to get to, just because, again, he's got the shoulder harness here. For all intents and purposes, you'd be able to rotate his body back and forth. But every single time I've done this, what I end up ultimately doing is detaching the shoulder strap. So I want to make sure I've just plugged that back in place. I kind of, in a way, wish that the pegs were a little bit longer, so they would actually penetrate a little deeper into the actual shoulder pad section and less likely to be detached. The figure also has a ball joint at the base of the body. It's a little harder to kind of see because he's actually got the belt in the way. Legs do split out that far on Trapjaw. You can take the legs and move them forward. You can move them back. Has a swivel at the top of the thigh. Figure has a double hinge on the knee, which is really good to see. And then the figure has, again, all the same retained articulation in the ankle, moving not only up and down this way, but also back and forth as well. Trapjaw was one, as soon as I saw images of him online, was definitely looking forward to seeing him in person. And in person, he definitely does deliver. Again, whether you decide to display him, say, for example, with the Revelation Skeletor, if you're lucky enough to have the original Mondo Skeletor, or if you got yourself lined up to get yourself the new Skeletor that we will be getting pretty soon, in fact, Trapjaw is a nice looking piece. Now, earlier in the reviews that we've looked at for Mondo Master Universe, I also had a look at Merman and Faker. I really should have brought those guys in as well for comparisons. If you're looking for Skeletor's cronies, we also now have Trapjaw to add to the mix as well. Trapjaw, as always the case when it comes to Mondo, they throw in tons of accessories. Some accessories, to be all honest, aren't ones I'm really going to be displaying with the figure. While I do appreciate, again, the work, the time, and the sculpt that they put into Kronos' head, never will it be a case that's going to be going on to the neck joint. Rather, though, instead, I'm either going to be displaying him with more of the classic-looking Trapjaw head that kind of has, again, like the closer-looking jaw, but by far my favorite is the one that has the wider jaw. Nice-looking Trapjaw, all in all. And then the hardest thing, really, about the figure is just choosing, really, which arm attachment you wanted to go with. Now, say, for example, we did start things off with the claw attachment. Any one of those things can easily be swapped out onto the figure, and the beauty of it is, like with the original toy, anything that you're currently not using, snap, can simply then just attach onto the belt that's with the figure. What is usually the case when it comes to Mondo 6-scale figures is that the company, to their credit, throw in so many extra accessories that you as a collector then have to choose how I'm going to be displaying the figure. Well, most of the time, all of the time, the figure only has 2 hands. So when it comes to all those extra weapons, you have to then choose the ones you want to display with the figure, and then everything else has to ultimately go back into the tray. Other than really the Kronos head sculpt and the non-used Trapjaw head, and of course his arm, everything else, luckily to his credit, can be displayed on Trapjaw. Like the original retro toy, he has all these little ringlets that he has all around the back of his belt that can store and house all the weapons that aren't currently attached onto his robotic arm. One thing I would, though, say is if you're looking to display him with everything, the crossbow honestly works the best attached onto the back of his body. If you try to put it onto his belt, well, the crossbow gets in really close quarters to everything else that's around it. So it's really better just to use the crossbow and attach it onto the back of the figure's body. I love the look of Trapjaw, and apparently other collectors agree. Trapjaw sold out pretty fast over on their site, and considering as well that all these figures are going for around that $230 to $240 price point, Trapjaw on his own was selling for $235. I can certainly understand why he sold out so fast. I would have loved to have gotten the more Filmation designed Trapjaw also as well, but like this one, it sold out right away for $235. The price that they're asking for when it comes to these figures, considering all the things that you get with these figures, I think Trapjaw is well worth it if you had the chance to get this guy for yourself. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Mondo that did provide this sample of the brand new Master Universe Trapjaw that we could have a look at in this review. Have you had the chance to order this guy? Let me know in the comments section down below, or if you're planning to want to try to order this guy. He's a great looking figure to have on the shelf, especially if you have already been collecting the Master Universe 6-scale figures. If you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly would like to stick around for more, hitting that subscribe button, one thing is always helpful to really ensure that you're going to get those notifications every single time a new video posts. But also as well, the bell notification does go hand in hand with the subscribing button to ensure that as well, every single time the person behind the camera, that's me, is putting up new content, you'll always be in the know. Always be in the know with the amount of the frequency, in fact, that this guy is always putting up new content. There's always a risk. There's always a chance that you might be missing out on something that I may have posted from before. Speaking of posting from before, if you don't mind me plugging a playlist, popping up also at the very end of this video as well will be a playlist of other things I've looked at from Mondo in the past, the present, the now, and all the things we'll be looking at in the future will also be in that playlist also. As of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.